Hello, everyone. It looks like we are alone. There are people. I'm wondering if it's properly listed. How are you all today? I'm waiting for Brandon to jump on real quick. We have a fun, exciting talk in store for you all today. And let me double check that it's on. All right. So, today's topics: know your TV's weaknesses, new TVs incoming, one great TV or two good ones. Hey all, hey Brandon, how you feeling, man?
Sorry, I lost my headphones in it. Give me 1 second.
It's all good. It's all good. All right. It's another Wednesday.
Oh, I got you.
You got me? Can you hear me now?
I do. Sorry, I apologize, man. I get within the range where I get like 5 feet further than my headphone will attach, and it doesn't reconnect. It just dies, and I have to press a bunch of buttons to get back on. Where my new headphones, they reconnect when you get back in within range.
Oh, yeah, that
So I
sucks.
apologize. What's up, everybody? How you doing?
Yeah, and Brian will be joining us in about 10 minutes or so. I think he's also running a little bit late. That's all good. We're just going to build up a bit of momentum. So today's topics: know your TV's weaknesses. And the reason I mentioned that is I realized the number one complaint is not so much, wow, my TV is so awesome, but rather, oh, this kind of sucks. So people with above average TVs, they're fine with it. The problem is always the flaws are almost exaggerated, worse than the TV's strengths, right? And of course, as we enter the fall, there are still new TVs being released, and I'm getting a new TV for review today. Literally, it just came in 5 minutes ago, right before the start. So I'm wondering if you guys can guess what that TV is that just arrived. It's a 65-inch, so that's a guess. That is a hint. It's a 65-inch TV I have in for review. And lastly, we will launch with what I think will be a very healthy discussion for everyone with FOMO, which is, do you get one great TV that does one thing really well, or two good ones that does more things, but each one is not super awesome, best in class, but definitely good enough. And we have the results from the votes. That's kind of interesting. So let's jump in real quick. And let's see here. Get on here. Boom. Know your TV's weakness. So when I did this video, I was listing all the weaknesses of the TVs. And what got me to do this video is most people, when they're unhappy, it's what their TV doesn't do. But what their TV does, either above average or really well, is almost forgotten because they spend so much time complaining about what it doesn't do well. So I'm thinking, what if you shopped for a TV, only shopping for the TV that doesn't screw up? What is your pet peeve? So my question for you, Brandon, is what is your pet peeve? And when you're shopping for a TV, what is the one thing that your TV cannot fail to do other than turn on?
I think mine is starting to become the blooming. I think that's the first thing. Blooming is
Really?
like
Now, was
blooming
this
or
an
the
issue
dirty
before you
screen.
got OLED? Like, you have OLED now. You see the
Um,
difference.
well, like I said before, I had edge-lit TVs, so I haven't really been happy with a FALD screen because I watch mostly stuff in the dark. Like I'm almost always in a dark room, so that's where I'm at with that, people. Yeah, for sure.
Yep, agreed. And well, let's jump into this question because a lot of people have this question. Any Sony X95J release date info? Technically, it's releasing right now. The question is, where are they releasing? Where do you order it? But it is supposed to be out now. So keep on checking on Amazon or Best Buy. And at some point, the 75 and the 85-inch will pop up. So that's for those who are looking for the X95J. Check on Amazon and Best Buy regularly. Any minute now, it'll be out. So for you, the one flaw that you cannot handle is blooming. That means that you can never, ever choose anything that's not either a Samsung flagship where the blooming is minimal or an OLED, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying. Like I said, I keep trying, but it's just hard. I'm like, I'm trying to get there, but I want to find a. I mean, I'm starting to think that if I had something like that, the QN98, I could deal because it's just more of like a pet peeve. If I see it in the dark, it's one thing. That the level that they have it on, that's really good for the QN98. It's much better. So, um, Yeah, I'm just trying to get there, but that's just one thing. There are other
Real
things.
quick, Brandon, our viewers are saying your mic is a little low. If you could turn up the
Yeah.
gain on that.
Do you think it sounds a little better now? I don't know.
Yeah, see, that's the problem. I hear everyone at the same level. It's not
Yeah.
until I go into post, I go, wait, I could barely hear Classy, right? So, yeah, they're saying yours is a little low.
Hopefully it's on the right. I'll check and make sure it's the right mic too. But
oh yeah, that's another thing. And Bat Tech says you have the frame. Is the blooming annoying on the frame?
Okay, there we go. I think it was on the wrong mic.
Perfect. That's it. I got you now. Excellent.
Okay. You said on the frame. What was that?
Bat Tech wanted to know, on the frame, blooming is pretty bad. Did you notice it on the frame?
Well, I mean, it's not. It doesn't have. It isn't. I don't notice it as much. I think on the frame because it's not. It doesn't have dimming zones, so that's one thing that I don't see it chase around. It's just kind of all or nothing. But yeah, I mean, the frame isn't a perfect TV by any means. I like it for SDR 500 nits. It's not very good for HDR. It's great for what I use it for with art. Like that's why I have it back there. It's for art and just looks pretty cool. It's not by no means is it a good HDR TV. It's just pretty average in all areas, and it has the cool art.
And I think you're spot on with the art. Most art isn't like art of black stars, right? The black space with stars in the art. Yeah. It's like what you have right there behind you. If it's lit up like that, I think it looks fine. And Jay Sino wants to let us know we're playing in the background as he's building his new TV stand. Nice. So that's great. Yeah, because the G1 obviously doesn't come with a stand. So that is awesome. Thank you for taking us with you. And now, any guesses as to what TV I have in store? And we'll see right here.
I was going to say that's what I was going to guess. I knew it, but
I
didn't want to ruin it for everybody. I was like,
a guess is a guess. Yeah. So there it is. I'll try to get it open now, just to set everyone's expectations right. Come on, this is not a U8G. The U8G is designed to be better than the U7. The question is, what are you giving up in the U7G, saving $300, $400, depending on what the discount is, right? So it really comes down to what is it? Why would you choose the U7 over the U8? And what are you giving up? And that goes back to the flaws. If I can identify what you're giving up or what it doesn't do well, it should make it easy for those who understand that compromise and are willing to accept it for a few $100s saved. So any questions you have about the U7, based on reviews that are out there right now, let me know and I'll dig into it and we will see.
Awesome. Can't wait.
Hey, are you getting any of the Hisense TVs this year, Brandon?
I mean, I'm down. I haven't got to connect there, and I know that they're always hard to get. I have a lot of time. We got time. You know how it goes.
Yeah. Josh wants you to know, and his name is Josh 8K. So I wonder what kind of TV he has. It's the Samsung Q900A, zero blooming, mini LED, quantum matrix fixed. Hey Josh, how large is your TV? Because I think Ratings wasn't impressed with the 65-inch size, but others have found the 75 and 85-inch size to be excellent. So it's quite possible that the 65-inch Q900A is the one that is performing noticeably worse than the larger sizes. So let us know. Yeah, please share. Or it could also be a TV to TV panel variants as well. Sergey has a question for us. Hello, guys. Bought a Samsung 9FN and want to upgrade, buying an 8K Z9J. I want eARC for a good sound. What do you think? Should I wait or upgrade? So, Sergey, this is such a good question because the Q9FN, Samsung's flagship from 2018, is it? 2018? Yeah. It is really good. As a matter of fact, its darkroom black control, blooming control is so good that people complain maybe it's a little bit crushed. Z9J will not give you that same level of blooming control. Now, it will be brighter, it will be punchy as heck, and it will be rich, saturated, that whole XR chip. So you have to ask yourself, what is your content? If you're watching a lot of sports, daytime TV, the kind of stuff that is SDR, then the Z9J will look great. But if you're watching HDR streaming, let's say Netflix, right, you may notice some blooming on the Z9J that you didn't see on the 9FN. So like Brandon just said, he's really annoyed, right, by blooming. Well, if that doesn't bother you, don't worry about it. But if it does, you will notice. Now, as far as eARC for good sound, I have mixed feelings about this because eARC technically, the reason why people like it is it gives you lossless Dolby Atmos. The problem with Sony this year is they're not processing the Dolby True HD very well at all. So essentially, you're not getting eARC through the Sony. Now, maybe it'll work better with Sony soundbars, Sony speakers, maybe, but Sony is still working through their lossless eARC, but its normal ARC works fine. So if you're using an Apple 4K TV, that's just regular ARC, and it works fine with Sony. You get your Atmos through, and it gets it through your soundbar. It's great. And honestly, I don't know if you can notice the difference between lossless and lossy unless you have a system designed for that high resolution and you're really listening for it. So don't worry about eARC. Definitely think about your darkroom viewing conditions, though. And yeah, did you ever get a chance to watch the 9FN? See the 9FN, Samsung 9FN, Brandon?
No, I have not. I hadn't gotten to use that one though.
And hey, Classy says there's some price drops in the LG C1. Now, I just checked the 77-inch. It looks like it is $3,200 now, right? Is that what price drops you're talking about, Classy? Please share, and then people will start buying it right away.
They're all the sizes price dropped. I mean, the 83-inch is down to $5,500 now from $6,000.
Nice.
So yeah, so a lot of that stuff, all of them have gone down.
And well, let's go to the new TV releases, since we're on this discussion, right? So for those of you still on the fence, it's a good thing you waited because more TVs are coming. People are asking, hey, when's the Sony X95J? It is this month. It is any time now. The problem is this. You're going to get the 75 and 85 first. The 65 allegedly is coming at the end of the month, but realistically, I'm expecting September. It's just how it is right now. 65-inch TV size is very popular. It is very hard for the TV makers to get all the parts and get the supplies out that they need, so they're releasing the larger sizes first. So X95J this month. Now, for those wondering, well, if I get the X95J, what's the competition? For the price, it looks like it's going to be the QNED 90 and the QN85 from Samsung. So we're going to have a video dedicated to those differences. But if you have any questions about it now, just ask. And we'll not have the X95J, we could only extrapolate from the reviews that are out there, right? We've had Brandon, you've seen the QN85. We've had Classy, who's seen the QNED 90 and his great review. And then Chinese reviewers have shared with us their measurements and opinions of the X95J, but then Robert is reminding us that maybe Sony is going to release a better spec version of the USA, so we'll see about that. That's my hope. And it looks like the September is when we'll see the Hisense U9DG. So as soon as that comes out, how many of you are waiting for that? Because that's why I put the C1 OLED next to it. The U9DG only comes as a 75-inch TV. It's expected to be around $3,000, maybe a little bit more. That's exactly what the LG C1 costs right now, right? $3,200, maybe $3,150, something like that. Who would choose the U9DG over the C1? And right now, I can say the one spec that is supposed to have better than the C1 is its peak brightness is supposed to hit 1,000 nits. So the question for you is, dual cell for the extra 200 to 300 nits peak brightness, maybe better APL, right? Average picture level will be higher since it's not a OLED. So something for y'all to think about. And lastly, is the OD0, TCL 8K OD0 still coming out? Not a word. If it does come out, I'm expecting October. It's an 8K, it's 85 inches. And guess what? It's priced, my prediction, it's going to be priced over $4,000, which is exactly where the 85-inch 4K QN90A flagship from Samsung is at. Any of these TVs interest you, Brandon? I didn't know if you're already set or what.
Yeah, they all interest me to a degree. It's just a matter of can they give us a certain level of quality, like you're saying, like if you're showing them, if they can get anywhere near the ones that we're pointing on there, like I think the X95J will probably beat both of those TVs on that list, maybe not in brightness, but in overall quality. You know, I'm hoping, you know, I do not like blooming, so I'll be honest about it. But I can overlook it if it's this clean panel and if it's just uniform and there's just, you know, it's just like the Nano 99 just had kind of all the problems that I dislike. The QN85 I was actually quite impressed with, except for off angle, you know, and then I am an OLED fan. I think that's kind of clear, but I'd be interested in all of them. I definitely want to give some of them a look. So we'll see. We'll just see what happens. Hopefully we can share some of these products and get some reviews out.
Absolutely. And Josh wants to let us know he has the 85-inch QN 900A. It's an amazing TV, but he does respect OLED. So this is something I want to mention. In my recent video, I was kind of down on 8K, mostly because it was very difficult to make it a true flagship due to compromises. But the one thing, I love the tip jar. Good job. But the one thing I noticed is that at the larger sizes, 75, 85-inch QN 900A, it appears to be consistently the better TV as opposed to what we're seeing from the 65-inch version of the QN 900A. So I suspect that if you are looking at 8K, first of all, the resolution improvements, you're not going to notice it at something so small like 65-inch, but also the other image quality improvements. I think you're going to have to go bigger to get that extra brightness and pop, because ratings, they've demonstrated that the brightness didn't exceed the QN90A, and more importantly, definitely the contrast ratio is a little bit weaker. So in a darker room, the QN90A will look better because of contrast ratios, and the local dimming algorithm on the 65-inch did not better the QN98, but that's the 65-inch. At the 75 and 85 inches, this is where it's really hard to review those, right? People don't have it to review. And you can almost have to go on faith that Samsung is doing a better job on the larger sizes. So that's something to keep in mind. And thank you, Be the Installer, for that. Let's pull. Yeah. Hey, Super Chat is live. What happened?
Well, I had to just do it while we're on the air here. So, you know, everybody who's on, I appreciate it. You know, you ask your questions. We'll try to answer them the best we can. But feel free to like the video. You can refresh your chat now. And if you refresh the page, it'll come back on. So awesome. We didn't have it. The monetization was not all set up properly. So I just did it. So we're good. Feel free to highlight yourself, you know, put a super sticker, super chat, whatever you got to do. But we're here to answer questions regardless. And I'm not going to stop FOMO's flow here. Let him keep going.
Oh, no, man, just stop my flow. I'm always flowing, right? Water just goes around the rocks. Hey, David, thanks for the question. Any predictions if the 77-inch A80J will drop to 3,300 to match the C1? Absolutely. I predict it will come close to the C1, maybe not match it dollar for dollar, but I'd say within $50 by Black Friday. And so this is the thing, right? It's all about timing. If you notice, TV companies are trying to outdo each other when it comes to timing everything. And when the A80J will drop to match is the question, when, not if. And so you guys have to keep an eye out for that, because you never know. Sometimes Best Buy does it. Sometimes it does it on Amazon, and suddenly Sony's got to catch. Sony's Best Buy side will catch up. So just keep an eye out for that. But know that if we catch it, for sure we'll post that on our community channels for you guys. And a little bit about the OD0 as well. I just wanted to mention that the reason why people are excited about the OD0, in my opinion, is you're getting the 85-inch QN 900A for a few $1,000s less. So that's basically it. I don't expect the OD0 85-inch to be better than the Samsung Q900A. I expect it to be close, but you're getting such a huge discount relative to the Q900A that it becomes the deal. My only concern is you're paying above $4,000 for a Roku. What are your thoughts on that? Roku for a flagship. Do you think it's flagship friendly? See here. Uh-oh, I lost you. Can't hear you. I was wondering, hey, can I hear you at all?
There we go. Sorry about that. No, I got it.
Wait, what happened?
Yeah, I try to mute the microphone because I got construction next door, and then I got planes overhead and all that. But you're just saying Roku, like utilizing a Roku, or you're saying utilizing the Roku OS for a flagship?
I'm just saying the Roku OS on a $4,000 flagship 85-inch.
Not anymore.
Why not?
Because it's super, super boring. It's like, it's got like, I mean, if you're doing a $4,000 for like a senior citizen that doesn't know where the apps are, or like people that aren't techie, you know, like people that aren't tech savvy. Yes. Because the apps are always in the same spot, but like Amazon Stick, it's like the stuff's all over the map. So people get a little confused. Roku is in one spot, but I think Apple TV has things in kind of one spot too, but it's just, there's just so much more, and it's, you know, the Apple interface. So there's not like a huge Roku like infrastructure in people's houses, you know? So you got like one Roku TV or that. I don't like it. What's up, Brian?
Hey, Brian,
up,
welcome.
fellas?
Welcome, man. How are you?
I'm mad late. I apologize.
No,
that's all good.
New York has just passed California for traffic capital of the world.
Really?
It kind of is.
Didn't you guys always have a problem with traffic?
What the hell?
It's not fun.
Yes.
I was never gonna.
Of course.
Dude, with how things have been going lately, I had no idea what you were about to say there. California, New York has California I'm like, what? With like COVID cases, with like traffic, with like, you know, there's so much crap going on right now. We're coming to New York in 2 weeks, and I'm concerned that they're going to shut everything down when we're there.
I know. We're going to have to all hang out at Brian's place, right?
Yeah, I'm coming over.
Open,
Brian, you're hosting us, man. My family's coming over. You got a pool?
I'm just kidding. I got kids.
Oh, hey, just a quickie. You just jumped in just in time. We're talking about LG and Sony dropping their prices. And check this out. The LG 83 inch is down to $5,500. Question is, when will Sony drop the A80J to be around $3,200 to $3,300, where the C1 is? What are your thoughts on the pricing strategy, Brian? Is this the time to buy, or do you think Black Friday will make it that much better?
You know, my thoughts on when to buy is when you want to enjoy it. Ultimately, but right now you can see they're feeling the heat from Hisense TCL. It's strategic. They saw the AK TCL come out. They're seeing that stuff reviewed. So I think it's for them a good time to drop it as they're getting that love. Let's just counteract and get back into that brand prejudice of, hey, you don't want a TCL. I got a Sony right here. And that's what they're doing.
Right. And I think this is a great question for you. EP asks, any thoughts on the 75-inch Sony Z8H? It's only $4,000. You've seen it on Valley Electronics. You have an idea what to expect. What are your thoughts for $4,000? Is it a deal? What are his options of $4,000 75-inch?
Well, the problem with the Z8H is its direct competitor, the Q900 or 950 TS, is down to $3,000 at 75 inches. So again, remember, if you're buying the Z8H, you're buying that as a 4K panel. You're not really buying it as an 8K panel. And unfortunately, somebody said in my last video, it's not capable of doing 4K 120 with HDR.
Oh, no.
So I can't verify that, but that's huge. So,
and let me remind everyone. So what you brought up is a good point. Those of you considering the Sony 8K LED TV, either the Z9J or the Z8H, it cannot natively pass the 4K.
Oh,
oops, we lost them.
That's all right. I know. I was going to say one thing, and you can confirm this. I believe that Z8 or the Z8H, that is 4K at 120, but it doesn't do like VRR or anything, and they had no plans to update that. It was what I thought that it said on that initial chart that they had given out on, you know, the X900H had like up, you know, it's going to have VRR and all those things, but the flagship did not, right?
Which with that, I actually understand. But to not have HDR at 120 is a huge problem.
That's weird.
VRR is one thing, but HDR is a necessity.
Absolutely.
Forget about Dolby Vision. But you were saying, FOMO, you were saying.
I was saying, so this is, you know, we're talking about Dolby Vision and not having 8K. So let's go back to this. Know your TV's weakness. I was thinking, okay, we all know how great the QN90R was. This is Samsung's top TV back in, 2019, right? The QN90R. It's still a great TV. I still have that TV. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. What if Samsung reintroduced the Q90R as is, but the only addition is adding Dolby Vision? Would it not be an amazing TV? Because the number one complaint with Samsung still is like, man, I get the Samsung, but it doesn't have Dolby Vision. It ends up being a tiny little detail. That's a deal breaker. And I don't know if Samsung knows that. And then you go to like the Sony Z9J. They're promoting as an 8K TV. but it's an 8K upscaling TV that takes 4K and upscales to 8K. But if you give it 8K, it takes it as a 4K and upscales to 8K. It cannot natively decode AV1 8K. It will take the AV1 into 4K and upscale it to 8K. But if it sees an 8K signal, it's not going to take it in natively. And that's this year's Z9J and last year's Z8H. And so a lot of people are getting an 8K TV and not realizing you're not going to, when you go on YouTube, I mean, that is the only content. It's kind of silly. You're not getting that 8K content. You're getting a 4K YouTube AV1 feed and converting it to 8K. And that's something that many people need to understand. If that's the case, that's fine. Accept it. But then get it, and then you find out and you get all mad. Sony doesn't make it easy to see that, by the way. Like you and I found out because of Flat Panels HD. They reached out to Sony. Sony responded. They posted it in their article. But if you look at the spec sheet, nowhere in the spec sheet does it say we can't natively process AV1. Nowhere. No, all this says is upscaled 8K.
Well, and it goes back to what we were talking about with using the number 8 simply to buy new TVs. And the Z8H is an amazing 4K LED. I mean, it is an excellent panel, but they're not going to circle back for it. And I had a guy ask me today about the Z9G. They're not circling back for that either. So they are what they are. I mean, the 900H, you'll see that.
Oh, we just lost him. Here you are.
We lost you for a sec there, Brian.
Okay. The Z8H, great panel, but Sony's showing they're not really going back. I don't think they're going to address that cut resolution of the 900H. It's just too much work to do that for individual panels. I mean, you mentioned the Q90R. They still don't have eARC.
I know.
So, I mean, as we go back to what you said about the Kryptonite, there's no clear-cut winner for anything.
Nope. You got to know what the weakness is. Now, this is I think it's kind of related to the video you put out yesterday. Here's a man, Hagen, I assume. Here's a gentleman, maybe a lady, that knows what he wants. Basic 4K 120 for gaming. There's no mention of VRR. Does Sony come into play for his needs right here? He has a bright room. What TV would you recommend that 4K 120 gaming is good enough?
I mean, it's hard because basic, you're getting back into the X90 and you're getting back into an expensive panel again. So you might as well go back to the C1 if you're going to do that, or the C9, if you follow me. So it's like going into basic, there really isn't a panel that does that well. Like the R635 didn't do 4K 120. It's like a 1440p kind of variant. So it's very difficult to even say yes to him.
Yeah. And spillage, this is a great question that we're going to have to reserve for KG, mostly because KG has been gaming the heck out of the U8G, and so he knows the strengths and weaknesses, but pretty much it is not as polished as either the Samsung or the LG. It's there. The VRR is there. And it's just different. A lot of its features are not fully enabled. Now, the U90G may be better, may be worse. This is really hard to predict because it's using a 1080p backlit filter panel type thing. Whether that adds latency or not remains to be seen. So hopefully the people who are getting these TVs can review it for latency. I don't have 4K 120 latency testing capability, so can't do it, but maybe someone will. So that's a great question.
Well, the challenge, as we mentioned the other day off camera, and I brought it up in yesterday's video, is that Ratchet and Clank update, which is called 4K 40, but it's in an 120 hertz mode, totally excluding the HDMI 2.0 community, which is all the panels we recommend from last year, AAH, or any of them that are HDMI 2.0. So even though in theory you're saying, hey, you're good, you have a 120 hertz panel, you have 4K 60, not the way they're implementing it. And that's a scary thing about what they're doing.
Right. No, I agree. Here's a great question that we get all the time. 11 feet viewing distance, would a 77-inch cut it? The C1 and the A90J are the only models I would consider right now, 83 to 85-inch size, and you nailed it. Those are the only two models in the 83-inch size. And my answer is 11 feet, you need to be at 83 to 85 inches. In my previous review, I kind of gave generalities. Over 10 feet, you got to go with an 85-inch panel. That's kind of like my rule of thumb right now. It makes it easy. Don't have to do math. If you're under 10 feet, okay, there's an argument for 77, 75-inch, but I think over 10 feet, you got to go with the 85-inch. What are your positions on this, guys? Do you guys have a distance to recommend your clients when it comes to these things?
Yeah, I'm okay with a little bit smaller TV than that for the average person. Now, yes, for us, I mean, you know, for if it's going to be, you want to be immersed in it, of course. I know that Brian and I, all of us, you know, we're all like, get as big as you can. But for clients, you know, a lot of people are sitting 16 to 20 feet away, or not, maybe 10 to 12, 15. You know, a lot of them, for reasons like there's no wall space available, so they have to do a 65 or a 77. Of course, as big as possible, but then, or if they have a mantle that's a 6 feet long mantle, it doesn't look good if you throw an 85 inch there that's 76 inches long, then it's 4 inches bigger than your mantle. And so you want to go, you know, 6 inches shorter than your mantle, or smaller on each side. That's what I recommend. So there's a bunch of different things, but I thought your video was fantastic. And the only thing that I could add to that would be my recommendations as a TV installer based on some of the things like how big your wall is and how big your mantle is, or how big your home theater, or, you know, your entertainment center is below. But distance wise, yeah, you're pretty close. You're right on. I would say 77 could be doable for, you know, 10 to 15 feet too.
Yeah. And it's also, you're paying a premium. And we talked about the 77 inches actually coming down to real levels, possibly under 3,000 by early next week. But the 83 inch, you're paying literally an extra 2,000. I mean, yeah, it's a little bit bigger. Well, that takes us to another good question is that additional immersion worth it for you guys to pay the additional $2,000, which is what I think the difference ends up being on the LG C1. You're going from maybe around 3,000 to just above 5,000. What are your thoughts on that?
All day, absolutely worth every penny. I mean,
there you go.
For the last question, though, I have a 77 inch behind me. That's what's playing, and I am about 11 or 12 feet back. It's still a good size. It just feels like a 65 would feel if you were closer. It's still bigger than a lot of other TVs, and yes, it does look a little ridiculous. It's bigger than everything else in the room, but I think it's still a good size for those, as B said, that are, you know, watching TV or coming from a smaller size. For me, I am going with an 83 inch C1. That's my final decision on what I'm purchasing, and I will be very close to it. And I'm all about it because I'm looking at it as almost like a projector. That's how I look at my immersion, especially for gaming. Movies are going to be a little soft if you're too close, but gaming, I want that full 4K resolution natively. I'll put that thing up against my face. So, and I am paying the premium because I could easily get a G1 or any of the other TVs for cheaper, and I'm still going with the C1.
Well, that leaves you, Brandon, because I know we've been struggling with this decision. I don't even know if you're still okay with that decision. What are your thoughts on paying the extra $2,000 for an 83 inch?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think for me, you know, it was pretty easy because there is no option for the A90J between 65 and 83, you know? So I wasn't looking at it from the perspective of the 77 inch A80J or this one. I was looking at it from, I want the A90J and that's my only option. So, you know, it was a little bit easier to justify that. But Brian made a good point. Like, you know, you could get it, but then he's like, nah, it's just not the one for him, you know? And so it's really expensive. I mean, of course, it's tough to justify that cost. I think that the 77 inch A80J is just such a slam dunk that I don't know if I could, like, I said that in my video about the 83 inch A90J review. I said like 99% of people I would recommend other things, you know?
I think, go ahead.
But what's funny is, so my room is complete downstairs. My 75 inch 900E is there. I could easily take this one off the wall, put it there, and just put the 75 back on the wall. And I just don't want to. I still want that. I want it to literally touch the ceiling. And I do want those gaming features that we've alluded to. They are very important to me. And that's basically why I decided that would go that route.
Well, I think what we're talking about kind of directs our attention to Sergey's question or comment right here. Thanks a ton. We'll wait a year or two, maybe until mini LED or QNED technology properly kicks in. What do you think? And I think as far as mini LED and QNED, we are at its 99 percentile. Any improvements is the last 1 to 2%. What I'm looking forward to in the next year or two is for prices to go down. I think it's ridiculous that Samsung is still charging such a premium for their QNED. I know it's a flagship, and so they're trying to add audio, this and that. But as I've said before, the Q90R and the 900 TS and this year's N90A, they're all slightly improved over the previous year, but we're not talking about huge improvements. If the Q90R was still available at discounted price, I would recommend that TV all day for most people. Most people don't game. Most people just want that really good darkroom performance. The only weakness with the Q90R is its motion definitely improved between the Q90R and this year's Q98. Samsung did a phenomenal job. But for many people, the TV they're getting at their budget would have bad motion anyway, possibly, right? So do you expect anything great in a year or two with Mini LED or QNED, guys?
I personally don't. I mean, I've gotten in trouble on the channel before for saying this. I don't see anything that mini LEDs accomplish that LED couldn't accomplish. And we talked about this the other day about the QNED. Hey, it's got 10,000 zones. I'm like, yeah, but it's got 10,000 mini LED zones. I want to hear hundreds of zones for a regular LED. So to me, it was just a way to sell TVs. I don't see the light control being much better than some of the older Q9FN displays. I thought it was a way to sell more TVs, make them thinner, and to separate them from the LED, LCD lineup.
That's a great point. And thanks, Bill, for the super chat. Yes, I'm glad we've enabled the super chat and monetize the channel. Thanks to you all, by the way. If you guys didn't show up all the time, we wouldn't hit our view requirement and threshold. And this is a great comment. I'd rather have a non-smart TV than Roku. He'd just rather buy a stick. And that brings up what Sony is doing. I think it's really smart. This year, they're releasing stripped down versions of their X90J and I think possibly the X95J, where it's just a monitor, everything else being the same as the X90 or X95, but they don't have any tuners, right? No audio. You just get a plug-in and you go audio outside of the TV, but I'm hoping maybe it'll get more sizes and better prices doing it that way. I'm going to get prices from Robert for those TVs, because some people, they already have a full home theater. What do you need a tuner for, right? Are you thinking with those TVs, guys? Brandon and Brian, would you consider a tunerless TV from Sony?
I mean, absolutely. I know the X92, which is that larger panel that they're getting at Value Electronics, is that. I know those Panasonic Hollywood monitors, those reference monitors, they didn't have any smart features. I don't need it slowing down to have Netflix and all this junk that's on the back of these TVs. I actually rather not have that at all. Just make it as fast as possible, and let's do it.
Absolutely. And well, let's do it. So this goes to my final point of discussion, and you joined us just in time. One great TV that does just that one thing really well in the size that you want, or two good ones, but not the perfect in that one thing. So I put this out on a poll, and overwhelmingly, people would choose that one great TV, like 77-inch flagship, whether it's a G1 or the A80J or the Q98. They know the weaknesses, right? Samsung doesn't have Dolby Vision. The A80J doesn't game. And the G1, you know, it falls a little bit short of the A90J in terms of color and pop, possibly. But at the end of the day, they'd rather have that great one. I really thought that maybe people would go for two mid-tiers, maybe a 65-inch Sony A80J plus a 55-inch C1. It's the same price, but they'd rather go large. Now, seeing the options, if you guys had $4,000 budget, how would you guys decide?
Well, I mean, I think. Oh, you can put that back up if you could for a second. Right. Would you mind?
Sure.
Just like
Yeah.
If you,
there we go.
Unless
there
you lost it. I think it's because a lot of people just don't have multiple rooms that they're looking for. Maybe you know, like a lot of times I get to people's houses. Like I was just at this house today, where this guy's got. I mean, it's like a 6,000 square foot house. It's awesome, and he's like, this is the room, you know, this is the room I want the big TV in, you know. So I think that's a lot of times why people are thinking that is because they may only have one area of the house where the family comes together and watches stuff. So they're just like, let's put the big one there. And then in every other room, let's put the Toshiba, you know, 32-inch TV that doesn't have a, you know, smart TV like Brian was talking about, you know, or something like that. Or, you know, they'll go pretty cheap on it. So probably a lot of the people said one great flagship because they see one great room that they want to watch TV in, I would imagine. And so that's probably where I would go to. I happen to watch a majority of my TV in the bedroom just because my wife and I are like on opposite schedules. So I watch a couple hours before I go to bed. She's up and out early. So it's just kind of like that, you know.
So for me, obviously I have the A80 here and I ordered the C1, so I'm in that other camp. But I think the interesting thing about the top 71%, a lot of people are agreeing to this without knowing what that really means. You really don't know how much Dolby Vision gaming there will be. We went through this with Dolby Vision and Samsung years ago. We said, Dolby Vision's not commonplace, and now it's everywhere. So the only problem with making that first decision is you are investing in a future that you're totally unaware of, because these consoles, Microsoft is pushing, they're going to push Dolby Vision 120 and Dolby Vision. I want that. I need it. So that took me out of the A90, which I think is the superior panel in almost every aspect. But if I was to make the choice of part one, I would have to go with that. But it's just dicey for everyone to make that choice because you don't know if it's going to be important. And the Z9G was a panel I almost had. I'd be killing myself if I bought that panel because they're never going to fix it.
And this actually brings up a great question because it goes to what we're talking about. What TV would be best, A80J or Panasonic JZ2000? And so, Miguel, something to think about. The JZ2000 is designed to go against the Sony A90J because the JZ2000 has the specs to be currently the brightest, peak specular highlights, the most color accurate. So if you have both available to you, you should be comparing it to the A90J. Now, the JZ2000 does have VRR. I mean, it's not the greatest VRR, but it has VRR, and the A90J doesn't. The question is, which one would I choose? Because the A90J comes in 83-inch size, that leaves that size out of the JZ2000. And I don't even know if it comes in a 77-inch size.
I don't think
it doesn't, right? So if you're looking at the same size, then same options, I'd go with the JZ2000. Honestly, it's just too bad it's not being offered in the USA. So Panasonic is a great alternative to Sony. Get the one that's least expensive. If that's the case, why get a JZ2000? Go for the JZ1500, unless you want the audio, which is what you're paying for the 2000, I believe, is a lot better audio. Because I hear the 1500 is pretty much similar or the same as the 2000 in terms of its image quality. So
it's just so hard mixing and matching these features.
It is.
Like, hey, you want DTS? Can't go here. Hey, you want Dolby Vision? Can't. Like, there's such complete reasons you can't go with something specific, and that sucks. It makes you say I can't go with this because it's missing what I use the most, and it actually makes choosing so much easier, but it just stinks because, like, for me, the C1 is nowhere near my very first choice. I kind of by default have to go with it.
Yeah.
If there was an 83-inch G1, that would be mine, but they don't have that choice.
Right. And that's why a lot of people are saying maybe the C1 is an unleashed G1, but they're calling it a C1. The reality is we don't know, but they're so close anyway. I don't think it's a problem because when it's that big, I think whether it's a G1 or C1, you're going to get a very similar experience. But who knows, right? Until they release a G1 83-inch next year or G2, we won't know if the C1 is really a G1 or not. Yeah. And here's something that's a little bit disappointing from Sony. The X85J is supposed to be a VA panel, but then the 43-inch is an IPS. So what you have then is an IPS panel at the 43-inch size that is 120 hertz native refresh, but at the 43-inch size, I don't know if you're really gaming with this panel. I mean, you might as well get a monitor or something, right? Because the X80J is 60 hertz native refresh, and it's also IPS. Might as well save a little bit more money at this point. So I'm having trouble finding what separates the 43-inch X85J from the X80J other than the 120 hertz native panel. At this point.
But other than guys like Keep It Classy and guys reporting this, how the hell is the average person supposed to know?
Don't know.
Like, it's a crime to say I'm about to get fired up. I'm drinking water too. That's why. But you're gonna go in, you're gonna buy a TV, a smaller size, and it's gonna be bland. And go, I don't know, why is this? No one, even the people at the store, aren't gonna tell you that. So it's great for guys like him and all of us to do that work, but that means you have to wait before you buy, and it's just arduous.
Well, I think this question could also result in arduousness because of the eye fatigue he might be complaining of. He's coming from a Panasonic Plasma, which we love. Now he wants an A80J, 77-inch, but not sure if viewing angle would give eye strain at 8 to 9 feet. Should I go 65? Also, 77 would be half inch too long on each side of the console. So we got a couple of things to unpack here real quick. The OLED, first of all, you can take down the brightness. So don't worry about that. If it's too bright, that's easy. If it's too dim, there's nothing you can do. At 9 feet, to me, 77-inch is a perfect size. It works very well. You're going to get full immersion. Going 65, I think might be a little small, but as Brandon said, that's fine too. He has a lot of clients that sit 10 feet away from a 65-inch. I would prefer 77-inch personally, but then if it's a half inch too long and doesn't fit your console, I would still get it, even if it is sticking out a little bit of the console, right?
Get a new console, bro.
I don't get a new console, man. Don't
just hang it, bro. Hang it right over the console. That's all I got to do.
If you can afford the 77-inch, it is significant improvement over the 65. It really is in terms of size, right? Not image quality. I think, and also the A80J 77-inch is better than the A80J 65-inch for reasons that Classy has listed on his video, which is it's unleashed the XR chip. It's not being held back because they're all EVO panels at the 77-inch size. Right, the 65-inch size, it's a mix of EVO and non-EVO, so they're going to pull down all the panels so that they can drive them all the same due to the older OLED panels they're using on the 65 and 55-inch size. So get a 77. You're getting more bang for the buck.
Well, please also remind that guy coming from plasma to be aware of the differences in motion.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, he's going to come from plasma thinking it's 600 hertz, which was always, if you remember, the way they talked about plasma. But there is a noticeable difference. You can fix it in the motion settings, but it may be jarring initially. That's
and
all.
A lot of people that have come onto my channel and said, "Hey, I had the plasma," and then they come back and they say they were quite happy with the OLED. And you could always get a different stand. You know, the size difference is great. I don't think a lot of people ask us about eye fatigue with OLEDs. I don't know what they're talking about. I mean, I can watch my OLED all day long. It's not too bright. It's not too dim. It's perfect. Like I don't know. Maybe if when I watch like a QN90A and it's on like full brightness, you know, I get a headache. But I've never really had that with an OLED. I think it's a pretty, you know, it looks great all around. So, and it also, the 65-inch has that matte finish too, where the 77 has the more glossy normal OLED finish too.
Right. And I prefer glossy between the two myself.
Yeah, me
but
too.
That's personal. Yeah. Some people like the other. It's not a big deal.
I don't.
This is a really good question by Matthew, because I think a lot of people may be facing this dilemma as more deals come about. So A90J is out, a bit expensive, but what about the 77-inch A80J or a little bit more and the 83-inch C1? What would you guys choose?
What's his question? His question is go with a 70. I'm missing.
77-inch A80J or 83-inch LG C1?
That's a tough call. I would probably say if you're, you know, Brian to say like if you game a lot, the C1, you know, but if you don't game as much, I think the price, I don't know, that's a tough call. I mean, honestly, I always would say I'd probably want to go for the size, but that A80J just really looks nice. And it's, you know, the price is still what, even with that discount, it's still $1,000 less. So yeah. I don't know. That's like, Brian, you're dealing with this, right? You said that's, I didn't hear that when you said it before.
Yeah,
when I had said I recommend the A80J 77. I didn't hear it right before that. You said you're getting that C183. I think it's awesome. I mean, I'm getting one here too for China, and I'm going to do a review and stuff. But yeah, I mean, they're both great TVs. Tough call.
It's having to choose the size. I mean, I wish there was an 83-inch.
I know.
I'd still be in the same debacle because gaming wise, it just cannot compete. I do think the A80 is a good jump. I do think it's better than the C1 and overall picture quality wise, regardless of what anyone else says, how close they are. I love the C1. To me, it's basically a CX. But yeah, that's a tough call. It depends on what size you're coming from. Because if you're coming from something if you're coming from a 75, you need to go 83. But if you're coming from a 42-inch TV, 77 is going to feel gigantic. And I would just go with the better value at that point.
Yeah. Now, my response would be, assuming he could afford either one and any money he saves getting the smaller one, he'll just buy something else and waste his money as part of his package, right? Because the significant other give him a budget, he will spend that entire budget. So given that, I would go with the 83 because I think the immersion from the size, to me, will make a big difference because now it'll be a little bit brighter. And I know for sure that even though I don't game seriously like a lot of people do, just knowing that we can plug in multiple consoles and do all that fun stuff when Dolby Vision gaming comes out. I know I'll be part of the conversation moving forward in the future, or at least my kids will be, right? So I would go with the 83 because of the mix, but you're paying more. It's not like they're the same price. So
Yeah.
I go with the premium myself.
But Brandon, is better than anybody. I'm sure when you're sizing up TVs for a client.
Oh, yeah.
When you get a tape and you measure them, like, oh, it's only 2 inches on this side. It's only 2 inches taller. It doesn't seem like it would be a big difference. It's massive. 83 to 77 is a massive difference in size. It doesn't seem like a lot until you get them in the same space. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's bigger.
Yeah, it definitely every because you get a lot more square footage when you do it that way.
Exactly.
But I think for the most part, I think that the 55 and 65 going up to a 77, that's a huge jump. So so I think for the most of our people and most people in general, the 77 is a big upgrade. But you do get a lot of people asking about like a QLED 85 versus 77. So this is where you have a better, you're closer now. So now you've got the 83-inch OLEDs, which are make it a little easier for us to recommend those too.
Yep. And Andy's comment is he doesn't think the JZ2000 is as good as the A90J because it doesn't have the Eco panel, the new Evo panel. We're talking about that. It's using the older panel, and it has LG's crushed blacks. Yeah, Andy, I did see Vincent's review, and I saw him mention those things as well. I think ultimately I'd go with the cheaper TV at this point because they're both so good and so close, right? But not having the Panasonic here, who knows what we would really do, right?
Yeah, I can't speak on it. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's so hard to say. But it does have a better audio system. A lot of people would say, hey, got your question here. Thank you. Start learning to fall. If you guys watched The Hitchhiker's Guide or read the book, flying is falling but missing the ground. That's what this reminds me of.
Interesting.
No reviewers ever mention TV tuner performance. Is it safe to say all built-in TV tuners are equal? The answer is no, but no one tests it. What are your experiences about TV tuners? I definitely know there are differences for sure, but I can't say which is better than another. I mean, when was the last time anyone tested tuner performance? What, a decade ago? We have cable, right? But what are your thoughts on that? I mean, this is so old school. I love it.
I mean, I have to, we have to get like for the very minimal client that needs it, I have to get them like a leaf antenna or something, and we're connecting like that. Now, obviously, they have the ATSC 3.0, which is giving you the HD. I don't really know a ton about the hardware there. It sounds like you can get that same sort of performance if you get an external box and then connect it to a normal tuner, because normal tuners can do 4K, I believe, right? So you have hardware to add in there. So I don't know. I guess because people don't ask as much. I know more people in Europe ask us about that kind of stuff. But I don't know as much as I should about it. And I just don't, I'm not, not that many people ask me when I'm out and about, because even people that now are going, cord cutting, now it just means that they just use apps. It's not like they use over the air for the most part,
Yeah, exactly. I concur with that 100%. I have nothing connected that way anyway.
And Don B has an observation. The newer Sony TVs with the ATSC 3.0 tuners seem to be more sensitive and more resistant to interference with its outdoor antenna than the older TVs. So there you go.
Boom, there you go.
There's an answer that we can. Yep. Thanks a lot, Don B.
Thanks, Don. Saved us.
And there's going to be an adapter, I believe, for those.
Oh,
if your TV doesn't have it,
those all day long.
It's
Absolutely.
Going to be.
Hey,
Amanda, what's up,
Amanda?
Amanda?
She always has a good question here
She's
and there.
awesome.
Thank you. I have a Xbox Series S, I think, and a PS5 all-day viewing, streaming, and cable. My top choices are LG C1, A80J, QN90A. Wow, you're going flagship. Currently have a 5-year-old 60. Oh, I can't go wrong now. I see a 5-year-old 1080p TV. Should I get the C1? The room can get bright. I think, okay, QN90A 75-inch. If the room can get bright, that will be bright enough. But the A80J 77-inch, this is what Classy always says, it gets bright enough too. It's glare. That's key. If you don't have glare in your room,
it's right behind
then the A80J. But then it's not a gaming TV. You have an Xbox Series S and a PS5. I guess we're back down to the LG C1. That's my final offer. What do you guys think about her question?
Go ahead, babe.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got to go for it. I'm not paying attention. I
don't
have
worry
a side.
about it.
I have a side thing I'll tell you about after this. You guys answer this.
So Amanda, the question is always going to be percentage. If you game, it sounds like you have 2 consoles. You game a lot.
Yep.
I think again the A80J is gorgeous. I love the panel a lot, but sounds like your usage, the C1 just covers everything. And again, for what even the Xbox Series S, I think they're going to do with upscaling soon, I think you're going to want to have the Dolby Vision and the 4K 120.
I agree. And I have to make this comment, though, is rarely do we get a question with both Xbox and PS5 and talking technical from the ladies. It's always the guys.
Yeah,
so thank you, Amanda, for asking.
Exactly.
Or is she asking for a significant other or child? We don't know. Who's in the back? Type that up for
Amanda
her, right?
is not. Amanda's
it's all Amanda? All right.
That's all Amanda.
Gamer. I love
it. Better be.
Okay. And Andy has a great comment. You want an ATSC 3.0 tuner, which many TVs don't have except for this year. And so this is one that a lot of people need to consider is, so the tuners on Amazon are few and far between. So if you are living in an area that has ATSC, like Las Vegas, for example, and you have a Sony, boom, you can start enjoying it now. But if you don't have one in your area yet, just wait for the tuners to come out and get a tuner, you get a booster, you get a antenna. Eventually you can figure it out. But yeah, it's sad that only Sony and LG has it right now, not even Samsung, which is very surprising to me. Hey Lynn, thank you for that super chat. Bought a 55-inch A90J, returned for the 65-inch. What do we say about
nice
larger, right?
There you go.
Thanks for bigger is better. A80J semi-gloss screen and brief image retention bothered me. I love perfection. Yeah, see, it's these little things, right? Before you don't notice blooming, now you notice it. You can't unsee the flaws. Like,
yeah,
I want to ask you that, Brian. What is it that you can no longer unsee? In any TV you watch, suddenly it's obvious to you. It's a problem that wasn't.
Unfortunately, I became very allergic to blooming with the KS9000, which actually wasn't even blooming. It was flashlighting. So bright corners, not just in black bars, but in gaming. When you walk into like a cave and those bright corners, it completely pulls me out. Way more than Black Crush does. Actually, Black Crush doesn't bother me nearly as much as blooming, but blooming's just not gone away. So it's still, I'm more sensitive to it now. I was hoping Mini LED would knock that out. It hasn't at all, in fact. So that would be blooming for me more than anything. Then secondly, banding.
And I think we're all now sensitive to blooming, which before you just accepted it, because I'm looking at my older Sonys, which is probably 8 years old, and now I notice the lifted blacks and so forth. But that's because we have OLEDs and we're critically watching our TVs when we do our reviews. It's really difficult to unsee these flaws, and I'm wondering, maybe ignorance is bliss, because on the one hand, you are getting the best TV you could afford, but if it wasn't for the reviewers telling you to pay attention to these things and you just bought blindly, everyone would end up with a Samsung or whatever is on sale and accept that this is a flaw of all TVs, not realizing there are the options. But is it better to be ignorant of the options and not just stress out about it?
But also, hold on one quick second, Brandon. Real quick with blooming, it's not just the edges, and we talk about black level, especially in gaming. I was playing Resident Evil 7 on an LED, and I was in that very beginning where there was the mansion of the vampire chick. And it was amazing how the blooming was within the textures of the wall, meaning that it IPS'd it out a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I found myself sensitive to anything looking washed out now, which takes me completely out of the IPS running. So go ahead, Brandon, my bad.
Oh yeah, no, it's fine, dude. Don't worry about it. I'm staying right there with the blooming, so don't worry.
Passing the baton.
Yeah, because I know a lot of clients of mine will just buy a TV like the X80J, those kind of TVs that are mid to lower tier, and a lot of those don't have the FALD. They don't have the dimming zones.
Right.
So, and a lot of people are just, I think it's more that people just don't notice the lack of contrast ratio. So you could be fine with that. And like even the KS8000, like Brian was talking about, I was kind of ignorant of it because I was just like, oh yeah, TVs have a little light around the edges. I didn't know that, so be it. But when you pay a high premium for these TVs and then you're getting the blooming that trails your objects, or how about this? You pay $3,000 or $4,000 and your Netflix logo or the LG logo on the new QNED when it turns off, the last thing you see is the blooming around that logo, just as like a slap in the face. That like
every time I film, it's like that. You're
boom.
like,
And I'm like, dude, $4,000, and you got to see like it lit up in the corner like a Christmas tree.
yeah.
That's where I have the problem trying to recommend an expensive TV. If you want a cheaper TV, I got options for you that are LED based or whatever. But if you want an expensive TV, or if you want a TV that's getting better in technology but getting lower in price, that's why I'm an OLED person, is because it's like we're getting the C10 at $1,800, and it's like that's a pretty good price for a really, really good TV at a 65 inch, you know.
And that's a great point with the blooming. It's not just blooming, the algorithm. That's why I was always apprehensive with TCL, especially Vizio. You could see the local dimming across the screen, and if the scene was too intricate, they didn't have a good enough algorithm to keep up, and that was jarring as well.
Yeah. This is a great question by Christopher Taylor, because he's doubling down on getting rid of blooming. I can't even imagine how he's doing this. I have two 77-inch LG C10s. Should I return one and get the QN90A for the best of both worlds, or just stay with the two 77-inch C10s? What are your thoughts?
So if we're gonna have this conversation, that means he's going up to 85.
Yes.
If he's going down to 75, then keep your 70. But if
There
you want to
you
go
go.
up to 85, then we can talk. But have him. He should be up here with us.
That is
like, why is he having FOMO too? Like, I mean, those two TVs are fantastic.
They are.
I don't think there's a chance that I would give away a C10 for a QN90A, even though the QN90A is as close as you're going to get to OLED black. I don't think I could give up one of my nice OLED TVs like that for that. So yeah, 85 inch, the size difference, and you got like a bright room and it's super bright, then there you go. Then yeah, I guess that's the TV to do it with.
But
And
the problem
I think
with
go ahead.
But the problem with the QN90A, as we've all talked about, is yes, it's much brighter, but the specular highlight aspect of it is going to trip us up, because he might notice that some of those sparkles and things we've all talked about, you even brought it up in your last video, is not as bright as even some of the QLEDs past.
Yeah.
And if he has a C10, he's already seen it then, you know?
Exactly.
He's already seen those great highlights.
Yep.
Thank you, Stanley L'Enfant, for this question. Try LG C1 white balance and color space calibration settings, and I know this should not be copied, as the calibration values vary per individual unit. Do I need to enter them for each picture mode? The answer, I believe, is yes. Each picture mode has their own thing. Now, if Classy is here, I'm sure he will give you an even more thorough answer. The reason why I don't calibrate is this takes way too much time. But yeah, I believe that you have to calibrate for each of those various picture profiles. And then some of them you're not supposed to calibrate at all. Like I've been told that you're not supposed to calibrate the game mode, because that's just completely crazy. So, but Classy is definitely the person to talk to for that. Have you guys tried calibrating your own TV? Because I am never going to try that.
No, I don't have any interest in it.
No, I had a magician help me out with it. I'm to segue my way out of here. I have to leave. I've been trying to calibrate my child not to do naughty things at his Boys and Girls Club. So one of my kids got suspended yesterday, a 6-year-old.
Oh no!
for putting toilet paper in the toilet with a buddy. So my question was, okay, yeah, putting toilet paper and clogging the toilet, not cool. But a 6-year-old, why is he in the bathroom with another kid hanging out when he's supposed to be supervised? And secondly, how are you going to suspend a 6-year-old without any kind of warnings or anything? You're just going to make me happy.
Right.
So he's been sitting in timeout basically all day today. And I'm just wondering, am I out of step for being a little angry that they just booted our kid, a 6-year-old kid, when I have a 10-year-old that I could understand? If he was in there like telling him to F off or something, it'd be one thing.
Nah.
But kids, like, I mean, it's almost like a science experiment for a 6-year-old. You know, he's just putting toilet paper in there because he's bored. You know, like, get him doing something. What are they doing over there that he's doing this kind of stuff?
No,
you know?
I had a battle with a school for putting my kid at 6 years old, having her feel like she was in prison, and they felt the wrath.
Yeah,
I make them feel like they're in timeout.
Yeah,
is the way I would roll with it.
That's who I was texting a minute ago, because the guy's like, "Oh, I explained it to your wife." I'm like, "You're about to explain it to me when I get there."
Yeah.
But I'm also not feeling well, and I pulled my leg muscle in a basketball game, so I'm all beat up right now.
Get out of here, man.
I got to jump out. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Yeah, I'm gonna go give it to the Boys and Girls Club guys.
Go handle it. Go handle
it, man.
All right, peace out. Bye.
You know, that reminds me of a story. Steve Jobs in high school blew up the toilet with dynamite or just explosives, right?
What?
And they pull his father in, and his father's response was, "It's your fault that he's bored." And his father just walked out.
Oh wow.
That's the kind of dad that Steve Jobs had. I think it was his adopted dad, right? But that's the kind of father Steve Jobs has. Like, it's your
Absolutely.
fault, right? This is hippie era. It's like, hey, you know what? Deal with it. You can't handle my son. That means you're not challenging him. I have a Samsung Q90R. Is the new Q90A much of an upgrade besides 2.1 and eARC? So I think for me, I have both. The Q90A, definitely motion is an upgrade. The Q90R, my biggest criticism of that is the motion. Everything else is actually pretty good. But I notice when I'm streaming, I see the stutter. It is definitely annoying. And I don't like putting it on soap opera because my wife hates soap opera. The Q90A, not a problem at all. It always has a setting that works for both of us. So if you upgrade, it's for the motion. As far as 2.1 and eARC, for me, if you're a gamer, the Q90A VRR works very well. So that's definitely an upgrade if you have a console. But if it's not for gaming, you don't need 2.1. I don't think eARC is a big deal unless you have Dolby True HD, lossless Atmos system, audio, all that stuff, and you have a lip sync problem. It's supposed to have better lip sync, but yeah, that's my thing. What are your thoughts on upgrading to Q90A? Latest and greatest.
Yeah, not at the same size. I mean, if you're going to go up in size, that's the
too.
great equalizer. Then right away, yes, you're getting an upgrade in every level. And I'm seeing some comments here. We're not being hard on the Q90A. You got to remember, we discussed TVs here. We're splitting hairs. I mean, it sounds like we're being hard on TVs. Q90A is my pick for the best LED this year so far. I know it sounds like we're being tough on them. Don't be sensitive about your TVs, guys. Don't guard them. Q90A is awesome. But these are just our thoughts on it. But I think the Q90R was great. I wouldn't think it's worth upgrading at this point.
Hagen has a follow-up. Now that Brandon's gone, same, we'll answer it. I said 6 feet max. What would you suggest? 6 feet max, 65 inch is going to be huge. I think 65 inch is fine. 55 inch would work as well. I have both. I sit 6 to 7 feet away when I do my reviews, and the 55 and the 65 both look great at 6 feet. But I go 65 just in case, though.
Yeah, I do 85. Look how tan I am. That's not because I drive a Jeep. It's because I sit close to the TV.
It's the blue. It's the ultraviolet OLED.
65 is fine. I mean, I game 6 feet from a 75 and a 77, and I watch movies from 8 feet. So, but 65 is more than sufficient. I have a 65X90 over here. It's a great size, and as I mentioned, being that close to movies, you will see softness as they're typically 1080p upscales. So I would say, 65 is a good size.
Yeah, I agree. And you never got a chance to use that soundbar, right?
It was going to go in this. It was going to go in this room. My wife said, "Hell no." So because this room is very ornate, I should say. But I have a 11.2 channel Atmos sound downstairs, and she forbid me to have any speakers showing. So that was it.
So here's a question. I think a lot of people are focused on brightness, and I think Josh's comment's good because it kind of directs us to the specs. I can't stand a dim TV. Blooming now is not as bad as the past. We saw the video when Y Spiel Status 74 went to Robert and recorded the Q900A in person. It was amazingly perfect. Okay, so if you were to look at two specs, what are you looking at now? Is brightness still a thing for you, or are you looking more at blooming?
Well, Josh, I mean, the Q900A did struggle with blooming until it was updated. I mean, I was able to get it to look good. It was only out of the box for a few hours, and yes, it was very bright. But I mean, it's kind of what you're saying. It's not any better than it was in the past as far as blooming goes. I think the Q9FN and the Z9D handle blooming much better, but there is a group of people that do find OLEDs to be very dim no matter what, and that's not the wrong answer. It's just how you perceive them. I have friends that buy the A9G, they hated it because it was too dim. I never find them dim, but if that's your preference, Josh, then OLED is just not going to be for you no matter what. And that's okay, because it's for a lot of people. I was that way for the longest time. It's not right, it's not wrong. The same group with plasma versus LCD. Plasmas, no matter how natural, just weren't very sharp, and they were very warm. If that's not your taste, bro, LEDs are always going to, or mini LED,
Right.
or it's always going to be for you.
Or I have the best suggestion for Josh. If it's too dim, he just has to take off his sunglasses. I couldn't resist.
Josh is like, damn, I had it on my profile pic.
Ah. But yeah, that's sometimes your viewing habits are what they are. And if it's dim, it's dim. No one can tell you otherwise, right? I agree.
No. And that's what I've liked about the A90 and the A80. I do feel personally there's more headroom to make them look more vibrant, even if they're not tons brighter. I just feel like the settings allow more flexibility.
Yeah, I agree. And this is why I recommend the Hisense U8G. You're getting, I'd say 95%, or you're getting 100% of the QN98's brightness. What you're not getting is that subtle shadow detail, the additional settings, the fine tuning ability of the Samsung. You can tune the Samsung to look like the U8G, but you can never tune the U8G to look like the Samsung. And so that's why you pay the premium. But if you just want that core value of the Samsung, the U8G gets you there. And, it doesn't have that gaming features that's worked out really well. So if you want the extra little bits, that's why you're paying a whole lot more. But if that just core brightness is important, I think the UHG is fine for most people.
And that's why the TCL and the Vizio being, the QLEDs, I was always shocked that they didn't seem colorful.
Yeah.
But you couldn't make them look like Samsung. So, interesting.
It is. It is. And there you go. What are your plans for this week in terms of tea reviews and what's happening? Because we haven't spoken in a while. And a lot of the viewers are asking, hey, what's up with Brian, right?
Well, I want to address this comment you have up here at Bat Tech. I'm not noticing any blooming at all in the 75-inch Q and DA. Here's the thing. What I would do is I would go to Jennifer Gala's channel and put on some space demos and see how the backlight actually handles that. It's not a fair comparison for LEDs, but you'll see what we mean about transition. Some people aren't sensitive to blooming, same with motion artifacting, but it is there. So when some people will say it's not there at all, it's nearly impossible for it not to be there. And I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying that, it's just a weakness of the technology.
Well, since you're on the mic, Transylvania has a follow-up for you, Brian. Would you pick a 75-inch QN98 or a 75-inch QNED 90? He's gaming and on Netflix. I think you've seen both in person, so possibly at Valley Electronics. What are your thoughts?
I have not had a chance to see the QNED because they didn't get their shipment in. I haven't been down there, but it's a very tough call because I do prefer Dolby Vision. I do like Dolby Vision. I like the effects of it. But right now, the QN90A still, to me, would be the front runner there.
Yeah. And since we're on the subject of
and
QN90A,
IPS panels I just can't roll with. So
I know, me either. This is a great comment by Bat Tech. So when I say when I say QN90A has less specular highlights, I mean in movie mode. In standard picture mode, the local dimming behaves differently, slightly erased black, better highlights. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. So U8G is exactly this. It has slightly erased blacks, but it has excellent highlights, and it's somewhat color accurate. Well, if you get it calibrated, it can be. Now, what it cannot do is do what the QN90A does, which is makes the darks even darker, allow you that fine tuning of shadow detail, but all of that brings down the specular highlights just a little bit. So in SDR, that's fine, but in HDR, when you want that specular highlight pop, I'm willing to accept the lifted black. So what I do is I put on enhanced dynamic range, or enhanced contrast, I think it's called. You put up enhanced contrast, you take it to a medium or a high, and suddenly you got the U8G, slightly lifted blacks, all of that's there. Now, the color is slightly inaccurate, right? It's a bit pumped up. It won't follow the EOTF curve, but this is what the U8G is doing. So you can still be in movie mode and do enhanced contrast, and you're there. And then you could go into either the gamma setting or the black level detail setting and fine tune it back down. And hopefully that doesn't pull back some of your specular highlights, but now you're going to lose some color detail. But see, this is not OLED. See, we're working so hard to reverse engineer what the OLED would look like without having to do anything at all. But you don't get burn-in, and it's super bright, right? So, but I see Classy here saying it gets bright enough. Stop complaining. OLED's bright enough. So,
but like I've had plenty of people that don't feel that's the case. But if you're coming from, again, the LEDs of the past, they're not bright enough. But it's, I mean, again, I have an A80 here, and I think it's plenty bright. I've never felt that it's too dim. Now, if you take off dynamic tone mapping and get rid of brightness preferred, and you get rid of all those settings, it gets very dim very fast. So it all depends on what you do with the settings.
And Amanda wanted to make sure I know that she is asking for herself. She is hashtag.
I knew you were,
chick.
Amanda. I knew you were. You need to spend $5 for that, my dear. Just
I know. I was
appreciate.
like, oh, things are moving
I'm
along so
single.
fast. And
Atta
Andy, and oh, I know, I love that. You hear that? And I missed Andy's super chat. Man, I'm just like, I apologize. The way this works is when I click on one and it updates, it takes me to the very bottom. I have to scroll up again.
All
So
the way
I
up,
think
yeah.
I did miss Andy's super chat. So let me try to catch it real quick here. And I found it. Boom. Hey, random question here. What are my thoughts about the mid 2010s curve TV fad? Oh, Lord, it's back. I don't like it at all. I never really got the point as it makes straight lines curved. So the curve thing is now hitting the expensive monitors. And I'm like, I'm paying extra. I want the HDR. I want the color saturation. I want the dimming zones. And Samsung goes and curves the thing. We talked about this. It has everything,
Talked
but
about
I
it
can't use
yesterday.
it. Right.
Yeah.
I can't use it as a creator because I don't need curved lines, right? I need lines to be
Yeah.
straight. And I could game on a flat TV. So this whole curve thing has got to go away. But that's just me. Am I missing this thing? I mean,
So
are
I
there
had
a lot of people out there that want
So
curved?
I had the ultimate curved TV ever made, and that was the 78-inch KS 9800. And looking at it, it was absolutely stunning. The curve did give you a little bit of that immersion because it does feel like it wraps around you. And monitors, you have to be very close to get that immersion. The challenge with them isn't just the lines; it's the screen uniformity. That's a byproduct of the curved screen. That's the real problem. So you will see some pretty heavy banding. It's almost unavoidable on especially larger curved screens, but it's just an aesthetic and it's another reason to sell. I did feel at 78 inches, it did add immersion, but the banding was horrendous.
And you think the banding was the curve kind of added to the banding?
Added to screen uniformity issues. I mean, you're bending the screen. It definitely caused problems.
And thank you for this comment, Josh. I wondered how the Q900A did with gaming because I know last year the 900TS did not do well with gaming at all. So I'm going to take a second to at least give Samsung credit for fixing very difficult challenges. This is not easy. To get gaming to work on an 8K TV, that's pretty impressive because LG walked away from VRR on their QNED 90. Like, we're not going to support VRR on QNED 99, right? The 99, I mean. That's just, it's very hard. We're not going to do it. And Samsung, now I don't know if Samsung's VRR works well, but at least you're gaming on the Q900A. Does Q900A have VRR? I don't even know. I mean, does it have the FreeSync Premium Pro happen?
It should. Yeah,
if it does, that's something that it can crow above the QNED 99, which does not.
Yeah, Samsung has always been ahead of that, no doubt. But I'm glad he's loving it. I mean, I'm glad it's also keeping its price point versus the 900, which they cut in half, which I thought was terrible. Did that.
And on the theme with the Q90A, this is the issue. They're offering 4 2.1 ports in Europe in the form of a One Connect box version, the 95A. I wish they would offer that in the US. So I think that was kind of their workaround. And it's quite possible with the constraints as they are, they just didn't have enough inventory to offer in the US as well. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. That's why they did it. But you're absolutely right. We should have had 4, especially for a TV that has such good gaming features. I mean, FreeSync Premium Pro, 4 ports. Come on.
Yeah. And we spoke about this with the switches. They're, no matter how good they are, they're very clunky. They have that little tiny remote. And sometimes you would like to have different presets for different consoles, especially now with Series X. Your resolution will be one on, it'll be on another panel. PS5 doesn't have 120 in that regard. So you want separate settings. I want my inputs to be separate for that reason.
And I will agree with, keep it classy with this as well. When I compare the Q90A with the A90J and the LG C10. The LG C10 could get almost as bright in the peak specular highlights when I forced tone mapping, dynamic tone mapping. The issue for me was I lost a lot of color detail. It clipped, it did get bright, and then I realized, okay, I'm forcing an older generation OLED to do what they designed the A90J to do. And the A90J, the specular highlights definitely matched, if not exceeded the Q90A, but it could not hold the larger areas like Mad Max, right? If there's a 10% area of the desert that needed to be bright, The Q90 had it all. It was, well, the U8G had it all. I mean, it killed it. And when I took the Q90A into enhanced dynamic mode or enhanced contrast mode, spot on with U8G. So there are things that OLED cannot do if you want higher APL on movies like Mad Max, but my eyes got fatigued doing that. By the way, it was just way too bright. I mean, Mad Max is great, but it's too bright.
Well, I think some of the people that we have in our community are missing what we mean by specular highlights. You know, we're talking about very small stars. We're talking about what you see behind us. You know, very small explosions, things of that nature on an LED look three-dimensional. For me, explosions like things like Gemini Man on an OLED look almost painted on, where on an LED, because it's a larger spot, it's quick. That is always going to be. So I think when you guys are misunderstanding what we mean by specular highlights, explosions, things that make you go, wow, LED is going to destroy an OLED. It's not even going to be a conversation. It's the small, subtle specular highlights that we're talking about. The light control of an OLED is what we're talking about.
And I think what are they saying with the HDR experience with Adobe Vision 4000, 12,000 nits? That unicorn experience is when you have that flash, you literally feel the heat on your face.
Yeah.
That is where they want to be. Not this year, not next year, but if you can get to, let's say, 8,000, 12,000 nits on Adobe Vision graded content. No TV can do that right now, by the way, but that's what they expect to happen, because when they have demos where they created that level of brightness just to give you that effect, it's always the same. You feel physical temperature change on your skin. Now, whether that's a good thing is a whole other matter, but that's what they want, right?
Well, and that was the Z9G. I mean, the Z9G was 4,000 nits.
Yes.
I'm not sure the Dolby Vision was the best quality. I'm not sure they had, done it at the chip level at that point, but
no, they didn't.
It did clip still because the content would clip it, the TV. So unfortunately, it was also like 4 inches thick. It weighed 200 plus pounds. It's just not something that's going to be practical for not just many people, but for them to even make a lot of them. And it throws off so much heat, And we've seen this off topic, but on topic, where California, as we were talking, was limiting where some PC manufacturers could ship their GPUs because of power consumption. So power consumption is also going to be a big reason why we can't hit that nits that we all think we want.
Absolutely. And this is a great question because expectations here. Florida sounds good. Happy with my 10-year-old Sony LCD. The blacks seem fine. Didn't even notice the blooming. Should I go for the X90J, X95J, or A80 for replacement? I can afford all sizes. So here's the great thing. If it's a 10-year-old Sony, I don't even think they had dimming zones to offer blooming, right? So if you didn't have dimming zones, you don't have blooming. What you have at worst is lifted blacks, where your blacks are not pitch black but slightly gray. Your problem is going to be, if you go to an X90J, you will notice blooming. You'll see deeper blacks, but suddenly, what's this blooming? So you're entering a possible problem. I would go with the A80, and you will never get blooming. And since you can afford all sizes, and we don't know what your viewing habits are, the A80J 77-inch gives you the best quality XR match with the OLED you're going to get. Now that is going to be amazing. What are your thoughts?
Well, and the challenge coming from a Sony LCD back then, it's not just that there wasn't HDR. And HDR for me has been the culprit behind blooming, maxing out backlight, making the panels thinner. Edge-lit panels back at the LCD you're talking about, you noticed what we called like clouding and loading screens. That wasn't blooming. You were just seeing little spaces where the dimming wasn't working properly. So to FOMO's point, I came from a plasma to a very bright LED, and the blooming killed me. So I would go right for the A80 if you can, because you're going to see blooming perhaps for the very first time.
Agreed.
And you won't even know what you're looking at, which is going to be terrible.
And, well, perfect example, I have the X80J, which has no full reticle dimming, 50-inch. There was no blooming. It looked great. And I noticed blooming on the U6G. and even though the U6G technically doesn't have a full, I don't know if it has full reticle dimming zone, but I felt that the consistency on the X80 was better overall. even though the blacks were slightly lifted, and that's why I assumed the U6G would have dimming zones because its blacks were a little deeper. But I went with the Sony X80J anyway. That's my preferred TV. Now I have the U7G here, and I have the U6G, and I have the U8G. So we'll compare them. But I almost know what my preference is going to be because they're going to have to save money somewhere.
Do you know what's funny about what I just said about the edge-lit TVs? I remember when they were selling edge-lit, it was like an attraction. Like, hey, we're going edge-lit. You're like, oh, awesome. Because they were thinner, but they actually had worse blacks because they were just around the edges of the TV instead of having the bulbs behind. So I remember being like, that's amazing. I can't wait to get this edge-lit. And then it became the bane of our existence.
Yeah.
Well, they sold that as a feature. I'm like, yes, I can't wait.
And I apologize for all the super chats I missed. You guys are so right. I'm so rusty. I'm like, wow, what's happening, right? I will get them all and come back for sure. If I missed it, I will answer it. And I'm slowly scrolling down, and I think my next one up is Vamps. I can't even believe I missed Vamps. I didn't see it at all, Vamps. I apologize. So your question, Samsung G9 Neo. The specs I fell in love with. I mean, HDR, it has all these thousands of dimming zones, and the size looked great because I was thinking I could have this giant monitor where I could do some creative here, do this and that, because I have multiple windows open, and I found out it's curved. So I can't use it as a creator because it messes up my grading when it's curved like that. The color is going to be off, right? At different angles. I can't do that, right? Especially with it's a VA panel. But so now I realize, wait, they're designing a $2,600 TV, but limiting its use case to only gamers. Lots of creators really wanted to try this TV out, and they've lost us all. So I think the specs are great still, but it's only for gaming, right? I mean, I found it was a 240 hertz refresh. Turns out I thought it was less, but I was like, wow,
yeah,
that's crazy. So yeah, it's a great spec on paper, but tell us, Vamps, do you like the curve, or are you not interested in the curve in which it was flat? I don't understand that.
It's a lot of money.
That is a lot of money for a curved TV. That could get old pretty quick.
For a monitor too. I mean, it's I don't know.
Well, it's a TV.
The G9. Oh yeah, the G9. Yeah.
Right. It's $2,600 for, was it?
What's the size though?
43 inch or 40? It's 40 mid 40s.
That's why I call it a monitor.
And I'm thinking, wait a minute, for that much, you have a 65-inch QN90A available to you, and it has FreeSync Premium Pro, or you can get an LG OLED. I mean, 2500, right? Wait a little bit longer, and it end up being a 77-inch. So. Yeah. Oh, here is Vamp's response. I like curve because it's ultra wide. True. That's the immersion, right? You have that very.
You know what? The ultra wide, it's going to sound, Vamps, it's going to sound ridiculous. I would love ultra wide if it was higher.
I see what you're saying.
So like, I don't need this. I don't need to see the whole street, but I would give me the ultra wide with the higher panel too. That'd be perfect.
I mean, so does it end up being like two 1440p's next to each other?
It's just thin. Right? I mean, it's not as high, so it's just it's almost like when they did those TVs that were like letterbox. They had those back in the day. You're like, they look good in theory, but not really.
All right, here we go. Sorry, missed the super chat, but we will get to this question. FOMO, can you make a video comparing Dolby Vision, LG versus HDR10 Plus for Netflix? Okay, so first of all, Netflix doesn't have HDR10 Plus. So what you're asking is how Samsung does HDR10, and LG does. So LG, Sony, when they take Dolby Vision, they look very similar. And I've done that comparison recently, and the Samsung looks warm, artificially warm. I mean, normally I have my Samsung on warm too, and I'm like, whoa, that's just way too warm. And the Sony and the LG, because I did this on the LG C10 as well as the A9G. A9G was kind of dark because I had the older one. So the A90J got it right. Netflix on the A90J and the LG C10, a lot cooler with Dolby Vision than Samsung tone mapping HDR10 off of Netflix. So, and I'm losing what I feel like some shadow detail just a little bit, but it just feels like Samsung overcompensated for Dolby Vision and just made it warm, which I don't think it had to. So that was my experience. I had to go in there and then move it to warm 1, but then it got a little cool. So you guys see where I'm going with that. And Amazon Prime does have HDR10 Plus. So I never had a chance to compare. Amazon Prime with HDR10 Plus, because now I have to find the same content. Let's say The Witcher, right? The Witcher is unique to Netflix. I can't check The Witcher out. That was the content I used. I used The Witcher, and The Witcher was very warm on the Samsung with HDR10. So my recommendation is, now that's because I have the Sony Dolby Vision next to it, by the way. If I take it off, right, a lot of people suggest that when you're reviewing TVs, turn them all off, take a break, look in the dark for a while, and then come back again, and your eyes will then get accustomed to it. The HDR10 Netflix on the Samsung was fine. It was because it's next to the Sony and the LG that it looked warm. Yeah. Because I watch it Netflix all the time on Q90R, it looks fine. There's no warmth issue. So,
well, and like Dolby Vision, we talk about, like, if you'd ever seen it, Samsung does such a good job with regular HDR. You just know what you're missing something, but you're not really. I think you're not really missing a ton. Especially we saw Sony have that bad Dolby Vision implementation. Samsung does fine without it. I just wish they had it just to have it.
And Vamps pre-ordered the G9. It's everything you want a TV with. I agree. The specs on paper is absolutely like cutting edge. This is what a 43-inch TV would have been if it was the same TV size, but I hope that Samsung takes this and puts it into an affordable TV next year. Being 2022, we're hoping prices go down, but I doubt it. I think prices are continuing to go up right now with these high-end mini LEDs. So, but yeah, let us know, Vamps, how it shows. I'm very curious to see if you have any issues with color accuracies on the curve, because it's a VA. So I think the curve is supposed to help that, actually, right? Because it's supposed to direct it better. So I don't know. Did you keep your head still? If you turn your head, does it change anything?
Well, it's funny you said about the pricing margins, though. It's getting dicey as the TCLs and those guys are getting more expensive. There's no way Samsung is going to lower to meet that until they're on sale. So it's going to be, we talked about Sony, Samsung, and even LG being cocky in that regard. They're not going to go lower if they're bumping into the likes of Hisense and TCL.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. They're sourcing from TCL. Basically, TCL subdivision, CSOT, creates the physical hardware for them now. Now they're just doing the processing like Sony's XR chip, but TCL's catching up fast. Like Caleb's recent video with the 8K 65.
He loved it.
The processing improves, just like Sony, right? Same number of dimming zones. They worked in the processing. They worked on the math. They got it right. So I have to say I'm impressed with TCL. I just wish it wasn't 8K, because imagine apply that same processing to 4K, even better.
But now,
I emphasize enough.
That 8K doesn't have an 85, does it?
No, the 85 is reserved for the OD0. It's 65, 75, and then OD0.
Well, that's why I don't understand the Nano 8K tapped out at 75 as well. It defeats the entire purpose. You should say I'm 8. That TCL interests me if it was 85.
Well, they have the 85 coming, so that's the one we're talking about. OD0 may or may not come this year. We'll wait.
Man, this year, like I'm losing years here.
Yeah, I know.
Oh my God.
This is a good comment from Thendis. So a lot of people have this misunderstanding that 2300 nits, you're going to go blind. Yeah, if your average picture level is 2300 nits, you will go blind. Yeah. We're talking that tiny little specular highlight. The person grading your TV, the TV cannot carry 2300 nits, or the monitor. It can't. It'll maybe 10%, it'll hit 2300 briefly. You're not going to get hit with 2300 on the large area. It will be a specular highlight. Now, I don't know how VESA grades their area. I'm sure it's in the specs somewhere. But like we always talk about, if it's a 0.5% window at 2300, you're not going to go blind. It's like a tiny little speck. Just, wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
That little ring light behind you, right? Like the ring light behind you, right? Brian's like, oh, that's 2300 nits. That will work. So yeah, guys, if you're seeing 2300 nits, peak brightness, it's in a very small window.
Yeah, and it's quick. And it can't sustain. And Sony was the one that could sustain it longer, but Samsung always had that brighter, but it couldn't sustain it. They would show it drop off immediately, and you really don't need it to be bright for very long.
You know, we talked up the Q90A, how great it is in 75-inch, and the price just went up $500. I think there's surge pricing off of our live stream. I've seen it happen before.
Well, I mean, I ordered one for a client, and Valuetronics can't get it for him. So, I mean, you're seeing a constraint. If they're short, they're going to raise the price back up.
Yeah. Well, Valuetronics, you're right. Valuetronics seeing that. I mean, they're getting surge pricing day to day. Hey, Robert, here's the new price. What?
Yeah, I mean, it's terrible. And I know that Sony was due for an A90J price drop of $1,000, I think 4 times, and
Now
they
that
canceled it.
Okay, so Vamps has a PG32 UQX, which is the HDR Asus. That is a pretty good monitor. So you let us know if it can match the UQX. I have a HDR version of Asus, not the UQX. I forgot which one. I think I have it right here. I'm on it right now. I have the Pro Art. I can't even read it, but it doesn't hit as bright as the other parts, but it's bright enough for me. And it doesn't bloom because I don't have the content that causes it to bloom. But yeah, I think Asus does a phenomenal job with their HDR monitors.
And monitors, it's always going to be about speed and motion and response. So you may notice a difference that way. Duck, what up, player?
Yeah.
That big green mask. Buddy. What's up, brother?
All right. So I know you have things to do. And if you don't mind, we're probably going to wrap up in 10 minutes, guys. We went for 90 minutes. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you for testing out our super chats. And if you have any questions, throw them in at us. We'll be on for a few more minutes. Hey, Florida, got a follow-up question here. So A80J 77 is $3,500 today. Black Friday price, still debating waiting. I think its Black Friday price will be within $100 of the LG C1 because it's priced to fight the C1. And so whatever the C1 is, it may be $50 more. I think between $50 and $100 more, it's well worth it if that's your use case. If you're not gaming, the A80J is my go-to OLED at the 77-inch size. Wait, you have the A80J, right? Tell them what your thoughts are.
It's right behind me. It's amazing. I think it's incredible. I mean, I prefer it over the C1 myself personally for all-around TV watching. But, you know, I get in trouble for this on our channels as well. Is to me, the months of enjoyment that you're going to experience from August until Black Friday is well worth $100 a month. So, you know, it's almost like the Black Friday rush. You're running in to save a little bit of money, but you could be enjoying this the entire time. I'd rather spend an extra $500 to enjoy it, my friend. That's how I would go with it. And I think that's a good price now. It's not going to drop $1,000. It might drop a few hundred, but again, you're getting so many months of enjoyment. I'd rather have it.
Agreed. And I want to address Paul's comment because this is, it gives us context as reviewers. X95J sounds underwhelming, and it does sound underwhelming, but I have to say, and this is what I remind myself all the time. So I recently reviewed the X80J. This is their entry-level X series from Sony. No dimming zones, and its color blew me away. Its color was so amazing on most content. Obviously, I put in HDR, lifted blacks, yada, yada. But most content that's on Netflix, on the X95J, I can tell you right now, I can tell it's going to look phenomenal. That XR chip color is so rich. And I know you've seen the X950H last year. You thought it looked great. The X95J takes that and elevates that performance for viewers, right? I'm not talking gaming. I'm just talking, if you're watching Netflix, I honestly feel the X95J is going to satisfy most people. Now, we're very critical, right? We're talking about the QN98. This is their flagship. We can't compare that to the X95J. This is Sony's mid-tier TV. You should compare it to maybe the Q70, the Q80, or the QN85. Now, that I think the X95J can actually beat. So you can't compare it to the Q98, a completely different tier. But what are your thoughts of the disappointment before the X95J is even being seen? Because I know I was, by the way.
So I know. We talked about this again offline, and sharing a quick story where Panasonic talked to Robert. It was after the UB 820 4K Blu-ray came out. And Robert said, well, when's your next model? And he said, well, what is it you want us to add? Meaning, we expect these big upgrades. And realistically, to have any upgrade is an upgrade. We just expect them to be larger. The X90 is an upgrade over the 900H. It's just not what we thought it would be. And the X95, unfortunately, just like the 950G, 950H, 900F, 900E, you're looking at incremental upgrades. And, you know, it's getting to be where we'd hate to say it, as long as you don't go backwards. But I expected the X95 to actually be a Z8H. You know,
which is huge.
Basically, I expected that jump because I wanted them to go after the QN90A, and many of us expected, at least I expected this year, what happened with the Q90T. I expected that to continue this year, and Samsung surprised me and had a return to form. Sony, I think they're just going to. I want them to beat the Q190. I think they're going to just kind of same it and just increase a little bit. And we've said this many times, the word intermittent is a dirty word in technology, but efficient is getting to be a dirty word in technology. Yeah. And Sony believes less dimming zones and better algorithm. We don't want to hear that as horsepower guys. I want more power. I want things to be brighter and darker. So I think
larger
it'll be
wheels, right?
Yeah,
it's going to faster times on the Nürburgring.
Yeah, exactly. But it's going to be an incremental upgrade, unfortunately. But the 950H was very good. It's just not what we thought it would be. At least that's what I'm hearing.
And to Travis's comment, Valley Electronics is not doing any better on the shortages, by the way. Everyone's getting in line. So Robert will do his best, but it is every retailer. It doesn't matter if you're big or small.
No, And Travis, with the Q190A, I ordered it for a client 3 weeks ago. He thought he'd have it, and he has to keep delivering that bad news. And Robert is pretty buried right now with, he's calibrated and things like that. But the Q, especially the Samsung model, is just very, very hard. But I think because it's in such a league of its own, in its own family, it's really the only one to go with.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of people don't realize this. When we recommend TVs to you all, it's a lot different than what we recommend to maybe our family and friends, where we know what their viewing habits are. Like if it was my mom or my sister, I know full well they would be thrilled with the X950G or the X950H or the X95J. They are just hoping it works when they turn it on and it looks what it's supposed to look like. They don't even know what dimming zones are.
No.
Or the X85J, X80J, those are better than the TVs they have currently, which are literally 8 years old, right?
Well, and
so
we
really are in the woods.
Yeah, and that comment that Bat just had up, hoping that the X95 would be the Z9D, you're not wrong, because the way they handled black level back then with the QN9FN, the challenge with that is Z9D had a high failure rate in the field. The backlight master drive had a lot of problems. So did the 940E. And honestly, we can't get TVs that thick again. No one is going to buy them. And I mean no one. I mean those that follow all of us, we are this tiny, tiny percentile. Viewing angle and thickness of panel and aesthetics is really the most important thing for the most common viewer, wives, whoever.
Wait. This gets us on a tangent that, well, it's not really a tangent. One of my viewers asked me, hey, can you guys talk about design, the TV's design? Because at the end of the day, they think that's important in their decision as well. And it just hit me. We talk so much about, well, that takes us to this comment. The Q98 actually surprised me with its quality. And so I take it for granted because you and I, we buy Flagship TVs. We expect it to look a certain way. And so we just take it for granted it looks that way. But when I get in a TCL 6 series or a Hisense U8G, I'm like, I keep on forgetting. They have to cut costs somewhere. They put everything into their panel, but the remote is the same remote that is on all their TVs, and they're not great remotes. They're big, they're clunky. The plastic is thick, it's heavy. There is no thought into the feet. I mean, but then again, I get the image quality. But then you look at the Samsung QN90A and the chrome in places I didn't expect it. The solar-powered remote. It is on the top of the line Samsung and on their Q60 for $700. That's why they all cost so much. They're dispersing the price across all their TVs to get you a solar powered remote. I am so impressed by that. So I have to agree with you, Chicho. For me, even though I don't review that part of it, I do believe that if you're paying over $2,000, you really do have to work on that look, right? What are your thoughts on cosmetics? Because we never talk about it. So
we don't, and it's actually it's a disservice, but I know for me, like the KS9000 was gorgeous. So it actually was sharp. It cut me. It's all metal, glass. I mean, you looked at it, you were like, wow. And then the QLEDs after that were very cheap for a while. They just looked like the same ones you would see in a Costco. That same client that's buying the Q190A, he literally did not want the 950H because of the ugly stand. And the fact that at 75 inches, he would need a huge table for it. So he liked the center, but it goes back to what we talked about with the Z9G and the backlight master drive and why this X wide viewing angle is such a craze is the average person says, like, I don't like how it looks off angle.
I had to show this. This is one of my viewers. He says, what happened to the TVs that look like this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, are you kidding me? We missed this TV. This looks amazing, right? Now this, look at that stand.
That's a Sony too, isn't it?
It's a solid, I think it is. It's a solid block of aluminum.
Yeah. That's a prototype, by the way.
I know, right? But okay,
Yeah.
imagine if the A90J, you're paying the extra $1,000. Let's say it's $4,000, where the A90J is $4,000 for a 65-inch or $5,000 for a 65-inch, something like that. Maybe another $1,000, and you get this version. How many people do you think would pay the extra $1,000 to get that prototype stand?
Yeah. Well, but what's funny though, when you talk to very wealthy people, when they get, it's either movie theater, they want a theater. They aren't as interested in TVs as we are. TVs are kind of like TV. People with Bentleys to me are like, wow, you spent that on a TV? Like, yeah, you have a Bugatti. Why does it bother you? TVs to them are really appliances.
Oh,
and
wait, someone has that TV. Wait, it's a Sony NX.
Oh,
I
wow.
owned it. Well, there you go.
Interesting.
It's a collector's item. Just the design.
Wait, was that the NX was the one that looked like an OLED? Because I actually had a broken version of that. I thought it was an OLED.
I looked at it, I'm like, dude, I
think that's an OLED. Yeah, then it would be the one that looks like an OLED.
Right.
What's funny though, even when I'm in the store talking to Robert, I can't tell what anything is until we get up close to it. They all the LED OLEDs look the same.
They do. And that's what I'm saying is, okay, at the end of the day, all OLED's just a square with an image inside. You can only do so much with a square, but when you have that stand and Sony does this, come on, you know.
Oh my God, yeah, it's elegant.
It's elegant. What happened? And that's timeless. Whether it's in 1980, 1990, 2010, it doesn't matter. That's something that I can take into next year and the year after and just change the panel. Leave me the stand. Give me the new panel, and I'll leave that stand on all day long.
But it's all trends, though. I remember back in the day when
curved
Vizio
TVs.
and Sharp, they had the badge was, I mean, they would glow. I did a video on a Sharp Aquis. They had Sharp in big letters. It's like wearing shirts back in the day from a store that say Gap on it. You know, that's just not. So our aesthetic is, our aesthetics are much cleaner now. You know, that's why my wife's like, no speakers in here. I'm like, why not? She's like, it doesn't go with the room.
Right. Thus the glass, acoustic glass. No speaker, right?
Exactly.
Okay, I have to wrap up. Unfortunately, I have an appointment coming up, and I'm going to let you go, Brian. But before we leave, can you tell us what to expect from your channel this week?
So I have
next week?
A lot of content. I have a A80J versus X90. I have an X90 gaming settings video coming up. I have a tech therapy video on the decline of physical media. I have a hisense dual cell video coming up, as well as we're trying to get the Z9J and the X95 from Value Electronics to look at.
Oh, we're excited about that. Yeah.
And I have the opportunity to have an X95 here at 75, but I declined it as it's just too large, and I'd be taking it from a client. Meaning I would be taking it from one of Value Electronics customers, what might be one of you guys. So I'll cover the X95 in the store, and then I'll have a 65-inch when they're available, if it's any good. If it's not any good, I'm not going to have it. But for me, my home theater is nearly complete, so I'll be back to doing regular content, and I'll be doing more of my epic live stream with cocktails soon. So
epic indeed. I love your physical media. I want to take your angle only because suddenly vinyl has a resurgence the last 5 years. Will we see that with physical media for movies? And so I don't know. I see it in vinyl, but I don't see it for movies.
I think vinyl came back, same with Laserdisc, because the covers were something to speak on. But the reason why I want to talk about physical media, we'll address it really quickly, is even going through HBO Max and all these other streaming services, the majority of them are 1080p, 5.1 HD. Even HBO Max, unless it's Netflix, but even their movies are HD. I was watching Ford versus Ferrari. It looked great.
Yeah.
HD. I mean, so we're giving up physical media, but we're also giving up Atmos. We're giving up our 4K. Now, if you go through Apple, you can buy copies of, that's not what I mean. I'm talking about your typical streaming. Mm-hmm. And I lost internet for 2 days, and to leave myself powerless without being able to pop in a movie, that's something that really bothers me. And that ownership, I hate seeing, hey, this is leaving soon. what do you mean it's leaving soon? And that's a problem, you know.
Yep.
And it's just like PC. I'm good having all my stuff on my hard drive. It's mine. But if something
That's true.
happens to Steam, I'm screwed.
Yeah, you know, King Kong versus Godzilla left before I had a chance to watch it because my family wanted to watch Godzilla first, the last one. By the time we got to watching it, King Kong was gone. Like, what? Where'd he go?
Yeah, I went to watch it the other day just to see how the HD. But even it was Superman. Some of the other ones, I was like, wait, these are not 4K.
Yeah,
And it is a big deal. And Ford versus Ferrari wasn't even HDR.
it doesn't have to be. That's the thing. It's not for everything. I agree. And well, speaking of just content, I'll be getting the Kaleidoscape in September so that I could use the A90J. Because I spoke to Kaleidoscape, like, guys, if I'm going to use this as a reference source, I'm going to have the A90J to see if there are any differences with your higher bit rate video, because their promises, they are delivering better quality video. But the only way you're going to see that if you have an 83-inch screen. You're not going to see it on a 40-inch screen. But an 83, where banding is most obvious, because I told them high bit rate or just more information eliminates banding. So I'm going to put on content where I know has banding in the content. But is it because the source is low bit rate? For example, in The Greatest Showman, get me your high bit rate Greatest Showman. I'm going to compare it to just a Blu-ray 4K HDR version.
Yeah.
If you have less banding, we're done. You're going to sell more of these things than anyone, simply because, oh, look, it's not the TV, it's a freaking source. It wasn't the TV that failed, it was the source that failed. That's what I want to be able to say. And they're like, oh yeah, that's a really good idea. I'm like, yeah, it's because why else would you pay $8,000 for Kaleidoscape? Give me something to hang my hat on visually.
But then right away you take right there, it's like, oh yeah, but you need an 83-inch panel. You're like, oh great, that, you know, so it's
right. So yeah, I mean, we'll have smaller. I have the 65-inch A90J as well, but that's the only way, because then hit me, I go, wait a minute, you're telling me that banding I'm seeing, it may not be the TV, it could be the source, because we assumed that the TV was unable to get that gradient. What if it's the source? You don't know.
Yeah.
And so now we'll know.
Well, I mean, and quickly for the questions you guys have, in my theater, I did make a choice. I am going to get an 83-inch C1. I just don't have the faith that I was. Oh, there we go. What's up, my man? It's a great way to spend my name, by the way.
Brain
is that, you know, I have a Denon 6700H. I have 11.2 BMW set up. I have an 83-inch C1. I ordered it. The challenge is finding me a clean one. It has been a problem. Because Value Electronics is going to QC it. I'm not going to have it calibrated. I want my own ability to adjust the display how I like it. I've been without it for a really long time. So I am going that way, but it is going to be primarily for gaming and some movies. And I have a PC down there and all the consoles. So,
all right. Well, lots of exciting stuff. And we hope to get you on again, Brian. Everyone loves you here, right?
Thank you for having me.
You bring a lot of, especially when you come in with a margarita or a Corona, then things go crazy, right?
Oh yeah, that's China D. Well, and I'll be definitely doing some of that. I'll be doing more interviews on my channel too. So I'll definitely have you guys on. But those will be more interview based, where I want to talk about your ascension into YouTube and things like that. But we'll definitely have more fun with it. The TV comparison stuff, it's all great, but I want to have fun on it.
Once you get the TV, what do? You don't come back to this channel. We want you to come back even after you bought the TV, right? I mean, it's like, I'm done. I'm good.
No, believe me. I mean, and I would say this: gaming on a CX at 55 inches, sitting closer to it doesn't make it a 77. So I
was probably get a 55-inch and sit like 4 feet away, right?
Oh my God, I have an iPad. But even gaming on the A80 with headphones, but being in the living room, unless you're in your environment, it really is, to lose that theater for 6 months was terrible. So I'm glad to have it back.
Is there a reason you didn't get the G1 because it didn't come, or
too small?
83-inch, right? You're looking for
Josh, I came from a 77-inch CX. If you follow my channel, I did a great ex-girlfriend analogy on the roller coaster of that panel. Had a lot of banding, had a lot of problems with the blacks. So I feel like I definitely need an upgrade. The C1 to me is too similar to the CX, so I definitely need something to just spice it up. And that 83 now is available. I definitely am going to go with that. All G1 I think is incrementally better. I don't think it's worth it.
And Classy has done a thorough job of comparing C1, G1, the minor differences, the A80J, and he ultimately went with A80J because he, like us, likes to watch movies and stuff. And I think collectively and universally, if you're only watching movies, streaming content, the A80J is just so phenomenal, right? But the minute you add in anything that has to do with gaming, why would you consider anything but an LG, whether it's a G1 or C1? And that, at the end, people have to decide what their poison is. So,
well, and it's interesting how with all of our slides and test patterns, TVs respond to them differently than real content at times. So in theory, when something is brighter this way, doesn't mean it's that bright with HDR content or gaming or how things are mastered. So at the end of it, after all of our critical thinking, you have to sit in front of it and say, hey, I prefer this one. And something like the A80J is absolutely gorgeous out of the box. They feel like they're like the A90 out of the box. So really, really interesting.
I want to address this one last question before we go, because that's a good one to end up on, because it goes to your physical media and why I think physical media will die is, so you recommend a Blu-ray. So I said yes, but that's because I want to be able to watch it anytime I want. But what if you meant, well, what about image quality? Honestly, because I have gigabit connection, when you get a high quality bit rate, 4K HDR, Dolby Vision, I could not tell the difference between what was being streamed and what was on Blu-ray. I looked for motion artifacts, and at the end of the day, I'm like, it's so close. And I go by the saying, if I have to squint to see the difference, there's no difference. So if you're just concerned about image quality, we're already there. But,
well, and Apple TVs does amazing and what's crazy about Apple TV has movies like Event Horizon in 4K that never came out on Blu-ray. So I think my argument with Blu-ray is I don't have the ownership of the product, and you can take it from me when you decide to lose your rights to it or whatever. And then seeing it not be 4K, seeing it not because of bandwidth, but literally being 1080p. But if you're going to buy movies online, yes, you can get them 4K and they'll be nearly indistinguishable. I found that same as you. I couldn't really tell the difference, but it's really the ownership and then these streaming services that will give you Thor Ragnarok in 1080p. And that's where my trouble is. So yeah, physical media.
That's the Bravia Core.
Yeah,
the Bravia Core has super high high bit rate content, but they don't tell you exactly where it is, and you end up with a 1080p feed somewhere.
Yeah, and I have 6 movies, and the Bravia Core has like all these B movies on it. I'm like, this is your THX enhanced? Like, I'm not gonna buy those. It's just bizarre, but and again, the physical media, they're just, yes, it's alive and well, but it's leaving you just with Amazon. There really isn't. Best Buy is dropping it to nothing. Target, I did the video I'm going to cover. Walmart, there's nothing in the store. I mean, 2 movies, 3, and even those are B.
Yeah.
There's more SDR standard definition DVDs than there are Blu-rays, and they're random. Yeah. It's like Liam Neeson straight to video. I don't understand. I'm like, what the hell is this?
I've never seen so many Bruce Willis straight to video. I
mean,
oh
my God.
You know what? It's a paycheck.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. 250 grand, 150 grand, done. What do I do? What do I say? And then they just kind of walk through their script and they're done.
They put it in this DVD bin, $5. I'm like, but I used to go to Walmart. I would literally on Tuesdays go to those stores and grab them. There was always now there's nothing, and it's a shame. I just ordered Quiet Place 2 on 4K. It's here somewhere, just because I wanted to own it. I don't want to go to Paramount for 9 days to watch it. So.
Well, that leaves us a lot to talk about. I can't wait to see your physical media discussion.
My videos are long, guys. I'm not afraid to talk, obviously.
It's not really a video. It's more like, what is it some of these guys do? They play it and they're installing their mounts and they're just listening to it talk, right?
It's just a live stream, basically, with taping it. And I'm never going to change it. So that's why my channel is the smallest.
Oh, you know what? Your channel may be small, but I tell you, the people you have showing up is large. So
yeah,
that's
I got a good group. I love them. Wow.
All right, everybody. Thank you for being here. And well, thank you for passing the remote with us. Until next time, pass the remote. Thanks, Brian, for coming on.